everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Seth Williams. Seth Williams is a professional real estate investor and the founder of retipster.com, a real estate investing community that teaches self-motivated people how to make great money from real estate while minimizing risk and creating more time for the things that matter. Seth, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, we have been looking forward to you being here for quite some time, so super excited to have you. Let's just jump right into it. Talk to us a little bit about how you got started in doing land deals.
Yeah, sure. Well, for me, let's see. Kind of started back in like 2006, 2007 when real estate first came on my radar. And, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad like a lot of us do. And I figured real estate was something I'm supposed to do now, but it didn't really tell me how to do it. So I wasted a lot of time trying to find deals on houses. And at the time, the housing market was really hot. Probably not quite as crazy as it is right now, but it was, very, very difficult to find anything even remotely close to a deal. And, I would make offers and people would outbid me. And I was just like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why can't I make this work? Like, I know this must work. Like, people are doing it, but I'm doing it wrong. And it was around 2008, after wasting tons and tons of time trying to figure out the house business, when I discovered land. And not just land, but also the delinquent tax list approach to finding those deals. Not that that's the only way it has to happen, but that was how I learned about it and got started. And, I was just blown away by how much easier it was, how much less competition there was, how much simpler it was. And like a lot of people, I was very initially confused about like, why would we do this? This makes no sense. There's no cash flow. Like, it just doesn't make sense. But once I figured out this whole idea of, how to find them repeatably and sustainably, it was like, whoa, this is a huge deal. And so that first year, I, sent out a few hundred postcards and got my first deal, and then did it again and got more deals, and did it again. I got more deals, and just kept growing from there. And it's just been an awesome business. As many of us know who are here listening to this, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. And it's funny. I think as a lot of us can probably relate, it's getting harder to find deals. There's definitely increased competition in recent months and years. And funny thing is, it's even though it is getting harder, like on one hand, it's kind of disappointing, especially somebody like me who has been in it since there was literally zero competition when I got started. Like, nobody else was doing this. Like, I never ran into another competitor when making an offer on a property. Getting offers from other people never happened. And it's kind of a different world now. It's kind of disappointing. But at the same time, like, what else out there still has margins as good as land, like, even though it is harder, like, it's still way better. So I don't know, it's kind of this weird place I think we're in, where a lot of people are kind of disillusioned with like, oh man, like, it's harder. But when you compare it to everything else out there, like, it's still a pretty awesome opportunity. And there's still a lot of opportunity to be had. So, but yeah, that's kind of my story. And it was back in 2012, 2013 when I discovered this idea of blogging. And that was when I started retipster. And at the time, I didn't really know where it was going to go. I was kind of just testing it out and putting thoughts and ideas out there and content and just whatever I knew how to do, like thinking back to all the struggles and difficult things that I had to figure out in land, like just packaging up those answers for people and just putting it out there. And preferably, I would do it in ways that weren't just applicable to land people, but it also made sense to any other kind of real estate investor. But sometimes, like, it's just a land specific thing, and that's just how you do it. And that's been a ton of fun. And that's probably what I spend most of my week doing these days. And it's just an awesome thing to do. And I think I'm just kind of wired for content creation. And I didn't realize I was until I started trying to do it. And I realized how fun it was. And when I saw that, like, people are benefiting from this, like, this isn't just fun for me, like, people are getting something out of it. So yeah, that's kind of, it's not everything, but that's most of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great. So, I have been a fan of your blog for so long. It's such a rich source of resource. So thank you so much for sharing that and putting that out into the world.
Yeah, you bet.
I really resonate with your story about, getting started in houses and seeing just how difficult, how competitive it could be, how saturated the markets could be. Did you have, did you have any type of mentors, or what types of, uh, of resources did you have when you first started in your land adventure?
Yeah. I didn't really have a mentor for land. I did have a mastermind group that was awesome. And to this day, I think they're an amazing way to learn a ton of stuff. And when I say mastermind, I know that means different things to different people. But what I'm talking about is just a free group. We just found a few other people that were in the same spot. Nobody was like amazing. We all had our successes in different ways, but it's not like there was the authority or the teacher who knew everything. It was just, here's what I'm going through, and here's what's working for me. And I failed at this. And then other people would chime in with like, oh, have you thought about this? And here's what's working for me. And learned a ton of stuff. I mean, it was so instrumental. Even when I look back at it all these years later, just regularly talking with people, like not one time, but like really getting to know people and their situation. You'd be amazed at what kind of stuff comes out of that. I've also done it for other kinds of stuff too, like self-storage. When I was getting into that, it was equally amazing there. Like most of what I learned was from that, up until I got started and actually started doing it. And then there's sort of a second phase of learning when you see the real world and how that works. But yeah, so it was mastermind groups. In terms of like just learning about the existence of the business, that was Jack Bosch back in the day. He was the first kind of pioneer to talk about the business, and nobody else was like even aware of it, I don't think, until he kind of put it out there. So he was the first guy to like make me realize, oh, this is a thing. And as I got into that first year, I just realized like, wow, there's a lot to this. Like there's a whole lot of information I have to kind of just figure out on my own, and nobody's going to spoon feed it to me. And I think it was through those struggles when I years later realized like maybe there is a need for something like RE Tipster, where, I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to cover every possible struggle anybody could ever come up with, but there is no shortage of need for little things that you're going. I mean, I'm sure everybody can relate. I mean, just weird stuff that comes up with a land deal, like due diligence items you could never catch until you just get into it. Or, just oddball conversations you're having, or how to structure offers. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So, yeah, that was kind of a big part of the reason why I realized RE Tipster was a needed thing out there, is because there's just always questions that people have. Not that I always have the answers, but I can at least try to pull in the answers from other people when I don't know it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's just really incredible. You mentioned Jack Bosch. Jack is absolute amazing human being. And, he's done so much in pioneering in our industry. And, you also mentioned masterminds. I think there's something special and magical that happens. There's just some type of phenomenon that happens when you're around a like-minded group of people that are all on the same page trying to achieve the same thing. You see sort of what's possible, right? And for me, I know that was something that has been huge and instrumental in my development as well. So definitely recognize that. So talk to us a little bit about what your first land deal was like.
Yeah. So for me, it was, in my mind, it was an amazing thing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. If you've done a land deal, that first one is just like, whoa, like this really works. Your first acceptance and the first time going through it and getting the money, it's like, this is amazing. But for me, it was a tiny half-acre parcel of land that I paid $331 for. And then I listed it on Craigslist and sold it for $1,900 a couple weeks or 11 days later. And there was so much learning that happened in that first deal, and really that first year. I mean, just so many lessons and a ton of work. I feel like I spent so much time just trying to like figure out, what am I doing? And that was, I think I did like 30-ish deals that first year. But so yeah, that first deal was just a few hundred postcards I had sent out to a delinquent tax list. And, a few people called me back, and there was a guy from Long Beach, California, who hadn't seen his property in 20 years. And it sounded like he was near the end of his life, just judging by how he sounded on the phone. And he just wanted out. And it didn't take much money to do that. And I found in that neighborhood where I bought that first one, there were several people and several other properties I ended up buying. And it's really cool how like it's almost like this thrift store mentality. It's like one person's junk and is another person's treasure. Like it's the same thing. Like nothing has changed about it. You're just taking it from somebody who doesn't see the need for it and finding the person who does see the need for it. And you can even like create that need just by getting good pictures, by putting together good information, just assembling a package that's attractive when really nothing has changed. You're just showing the thing in its best possible light. So.
Yeah, that's a really, really great perspective to have on that. And so much power comes from that very first deal and getting proof of concept that like, man, this really works, right?
For sure.
So can you talk a little bit about, what was your mindset like going from, okay, I've done one deal and now I'm going to just do 30 deals by the end of that year? Talk to us a little bit about what that journey was like for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So people who know me, well, maybe they don't know this, but I'm not a very good. Are you familiar with the DISC personality test?
Yes.
Like there's the D, I, S, and the C. And the D, a lot of people I know who are entrepreneurs are really strong Ds. Like they're dreamers. They have great ideas. They know how to build teams and cast a vision and like figure out where are we going. I'm not that way though. I'm terrible at that. It's like a Achilles heel for me. What I'm really good at is I'm a strong S. So I basically make a really good employee. Like if you tell me to do something, like I'll just put my head down and work on it. And I'm the worker bee and I get great results from that and I get places, but that can only get you so far. At some point you need a vision and you need to figure out where to go. And, I didn't really have a super strong vision my first year. It was more of, I'm going to make offers on literally everything. Like, even if it's like, I didn't really understand what a junk property was at that point, something that was literally useless. But I made offers on all that stuff. And part of it was just, under the premise of I'm going to just learn as much as I can. And I did learn. I learned what kind of properties to not make offers on. But I didn't have a plan for like, okay, there's going to be 30 deals this year. That was not it at all. It was more just like, as I have time on my nights and weekends, I'm going to send this mail out and I'm going to call people back and I'm going to, send offers and we're going to close deals and we'll see what happens. And just seeing what the margins were, like it was pretty much a no-brainer after the first few deals that like, I'm going to make money. I just don't know how much I'm going to make or how far I'm going to be able to get. But I was coming from a standpoint of, it was a job that, it was an entry-level job right out of college. It wasn't paying anything awesome, but it gave me time to plug away at a side hustle. And so I was just trying to use the time I had to make any kind of progress. And not having a super clear vision or a very strong definition of like, we go after these kinds of properties, but not these. Like that was not figured out at all. And I guess that was another big finding from that first year or two is like some properties can waste a ton of time and really not get you anywhere. And even like certain campaigns when you're going after the wrong types of properties. And that was just, I guess that was my mentality. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I don't know, here I am. So.
Well, that's really fantastic. I'm such a big fan of messy action and getting in and learning. I don't think that there's any better substitute for learning and education than actually getting in and doing it and figuring it out as you go. Right.
Yeah.
And, so can you talk a little bit about, your first few properties? It sounds like you were flipping them, right? Like you were buying them and selling them at a profit. How did you progress through the different types of deals that you did in your career?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for the most part, flipping them without doing any improvements, like that's still kind of what I do when I do land deals. I have done a little bit of rezoning and development and that kind of stuff, but when I think of, I put my land flipper hat on, I'm not intentionally going after stuff to subdivide it. I know some people do that and that's totally cool, but that's just, it's not my first plan of attack. If something comes up, then I'll use what resources I can to possibly pursue that. But, but I guess as things evolved, so those first few years, it was going after a lot of the cheaper stuff, a lot of the stuff that, really base hits, I guess. And I was also very much stuck in Michigan. For some reason, I had this idea that I had to do it where I lived. I think it was year 2 or 3 when the light bulb kind of went off and I realized I don't have to do that. And that's when I started sending mail everywhere and putting up a buying website and getting leads from all over the place and just doing stuff, all over the place. So over those first few years, it kind of evolved into working around the country and also, in terms of like specifically targeting bigger deals. I mean, that's kind of the underlying goal, but, if I get a good deal that's cheap, I'm not going to say no to that necessarily. It's just that, there's certain boxes for, what I'm going to bend over backwards to try to go after versus certain kind of properties where I'm not really going to, bend over backwards to make this thing work. Like if the person says no to my first offer, it's like, okay, see ya. So yeah, just kind of getting a little bit clear on, what kind of property I do and don't. And a lot of that just comes from experience, just realizing, okay, I went after this property in this area for this profit margin and it was totally not worth it. Or at least it wasn't that exciting. It was more like working a job rather than like, this amazing investment. So.
Hey, land fans, looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the OnlyLandFans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at onlylandfansgroup.com and join the conversation today. That's onlylandfansgroup.com. See you there. Yeah, that makes total sense. So if you had to say, I specialize in this type of deal right now at this point in my career, what would that be?
Yeah. Well, right now I'm looking for more, another self-storage deal, like a property to develop. So I guess that kind of flies in the face of what I just told you in terms of I just flip stuff. But this past 9 months or so, my time has been like, I don't want to say really bogged down, but somewhat bogged down with building out this first storage facility. Just lots of weird stuff coming up and stuff that kind of diverts my time and attention. But now that I've done that and we're across the finish line and it went reasonably well, it was definitely a pain at certain points. But now that I've done that, it's like, it'd be kind of be a shame if I didn't do this again. Like I've just learned so much about how this works and so many things I would do differently if I could start that project over again. So I'm kind of looking for areas to do that again. And the interesting thing about that is it's a very different approach than what a land flipper who doesn't improve anything. It's a very different mindset about like, what kind of property do you want to buy? Because the location matters a lot. Like you don't just buy, I mean, I guess you could buy something in the middle of nowhere and build it, but that's not the best first move. The location is, I don't want to say high traffic is critical, but it's definitely a relevant thing that should go into that equation. And also understanding like, what is the competition in the 5 mile radius or 7 mile radius or 3 mile radius of this location? Like how many of the facilities are there and are they full and what are they charging? And just a lot of different things you want to look at before you even understand like this is a good market. And then once that is there, you can almost scope out more specifically like, okay, I've put pins on these like 20 properties in this zip code and all of these can work. So I'm going to reach out to them specifically, almost like with a phone call. You could do direct mail, but so it's just kind of a different approach on how to do that. But so that's currently what I'm doing. If I hadn't gone down the whole self-storage route, then I probably would be focusing on stuff that I know it could make a 20 grand profit on. Like that would sort of be my ideal. That's a good deal. Again, if it was 10 grand, if it was 5 grand, I might do it if it was super easy and fell into my lap. But yeah.
That makes total sense. So tell us a little bit about what attracted you to self-storage.
Yeah. So for self-storage, that's an interesting topic for discussion. I've mentioned this to a handful of people at different conferences I was at this past month, but I think I'm coming up with this new philosophy that every land flipper should be actively trying to work themselves out of the land business. Like you should not be trying to stay here because this is a hamster wheel is what it is. It's a hamster wheel that pays really well. And so it's awesome, but like, it's still a hamster wheel and you're going to be doing this I mean, forever, if you don't have some kind of an exit plan on what's next. And what's next could be anything. I mean, in my mind, what's next is going to be something that is going to generate cash flow without my constant involvement. I don't have to keep peddling for that money to come in. And that could be so many different things. I mean, that could be anything. I mean, there's tons of stuff in real estate that could do that. But the reason I landed on self-storage is because it's got really interesting economies of scale. Because there's so many doors on one facility, you could increase everybody's rent by $5 and you just made the value of that property go way up, because $5 times 265 or however many units you have. I mean, that matters a lot in the long term of how you appraise that property and what the implications are for that. And nobody is going to move out if their rent goes up $5. So it's almost like they don't even notice it or think about it, but you just made a lot more money. And self-storage, probably apartment complexes are the two kinds of properties I know of where you can do that kind of thing. But even more so with self-storage, because you can cram a lot of those units into one area. And it's also I would not call it passive, but it's very, very easy in terms of property management. I mean, you could easily manage this thing in under 5 hours a week, probably less than that. And the stuff that is required, like it's not that hard to find somebody else near the place to do it for you. So, I mean, I know storage owners who haven't seen their facilities in years because they just call up what they need to clear out a unit when it's needed. So, so that's what attracted me to self-storage. But on that, I mean, it's as I've been doing this, it's crystallized in my mind. Like I should have been doing this a long time ago. Like I should not have waited this long to start this journey of doing something to completely replace land. And as somebody who like educates people about land, I'll probably always be doing something. I mean, I can't just totally withdraw from that, but the goal should not be to rely on a land flipping business for your livelihood. I mean, you could certainly do that, but like, what if you get sick? What if you get tired of it? What if you get bored of it? A lot of people get bored with land and they kind of feel stuck. And I think the difficult thing about moving on to something else is the question comes up, well, what else has better margins? I mean, where can I get a better ROI? Like, yeah, I could plug, hundreds of thousands into a self-storage facility, but like land would make so much more money if I were to just keep doing deals. And my answer to that is, yeah, you're right. But like, how much work does it take to do that? Do you want to keep doing that work forever? Like, is it really that fun? I know the first dozen deals are super exhilarating, but anybody who's done a few hundred deals can relate. Like, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And some deals are exciting because they're huge, but I don't know. I think if you feel like you were put on this earth to just flip dirt, like if that's really your highest calling in life, then don't listen to me. Keep flipping that. I'm sure there are people like that out there, but just looking at myself and casting my own issues onto everybody else, I just, there's more stuff I want to do with my life. And I'm planning to do that. And if I just stayed with land flipping and never did anything else, I wouldn't be able to do those things. You look at similar examples like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he first got famous by being a professional bodybuilder. He won Mr. Universe or whatever it is, 8 times in a row, some amazing thing. And that right there is a huge accomplishment. Most of us would say like, he's, way cooler than me. Well, like he didn't stop there. What if he did stop there and he just faded into oblivion? No, he became an actor, then he became a governor, and now he's like a political activist and getting back. Like he's done a lot of stuff in his life. And I think everybody should kind of look at the world that way. It's like, find your first thing that you're successful at. And for a lot of us, that's land, but don't stop there. Like keep going. Like there's more you can do. You don't have to stop with land. I think it's an amazing cash generating machine, but it doesn't have to be the end of the story. And if it's not something that, like being honest with yourself, like if it doesn't really excite you long term, then find something else. But use that cash wisely to fund the next thing, whatever that might be.
Yeah, that's a really great insight. Just the whole idea of evolution and, what is it that you want to create in your life? It's a really big question. And I think it's one worth thinking about often. We hear a lot about, sort of people that get started in single family homes. They do a similar evolution of they move from fix and flippers to now maybe they, have investments in commercial properties and apartment complexes. So a lot of that, rings true. It's very interesting for sure.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, Seth, like, it's like you are reading my mind. I love this land thing. However, it's starting to get a little bit mundane. I've been thinking about looking at something else. What is that next logical step for them? Say they wanted to get into self-storage, someone that has a land background. What type of advice would you give to them? Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's Triple Digit Flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything.
Yeah, well, I think whatever the next thing is, and it doesn't have to be self-storage. I mean, it's kind of a boring business as well, similar to land. And a lot of people overlook of it because of how boring it is, but like it's got some amazing qualities for it as well. And so if it's storage or if it's something else, I mean, I can tell you what I did. I got into a mastermind. I connected with other active storage investors who were really doing it and got a lot of insight from them, made tons and tons of notes, developed good relationships with those people that I still maintain to this day. And then when I found my first property and decided to do this thing, I just started getting my hands dirty, just bumping into walls and figuring out like, nope, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And like, for example, the property that I bought, originally it was residential and I had to rezone it to commercial. And that was the first big hurdle, because if I hadn't been able to do that, my deal would have been dead in the water. And so it was kind of a risk to buy that property on the assumption that I could get it rezoned. What a lot of people would have done is maybe put an option on it or like a purchase agreement with 6 months to give them time to try to change it. But I didn't do that. I just bought the thing. But the reason I was able to do that is because I had a really good plan B. If it hadn't worked out, I could have split it up into 3 parcels and sold it as 3 more and made some money on it. But when I made that decision, like I knew I had an exit plan if things didn't go as planned. And then I just started making calls and talking to civil engineers and surveyors and planners and figuring out like, how do you do this? How do you change the zoning? And just asking questions and getting a free education from a lot of the people who are happy to explain what to do. There's like a ton of stuff you can learn if you just pick up the phone and call people. People will tell you all kinds of stuff. And it may not be like perfectly organized. It may take more time because it's not being served up to you piece by piece in a course or something, but there's still a ton of stuff you can learn from that. And I also hired some consultants when I got into the actual like design stage. I think I paid them like 25 or 30,000 bucks altogether. And the main reason for that was mainly because like I just didn't know what I was doing. Like I had my own ideas, but like I had never done it. And I knew there were probably all kinds of things that I wasn't going to do right, that I was going to miss. And, there were definitely some key insights that they gave me that saved me some money. And they even pointed me to the right contractors to work with and certain people that could help get along the way. And honestly, like there were certain things they told me that I wouldn't do again. Like, I don't think they were right about everything, but still just, a lot of us can probably relate. If you've ever like seen a land deal and you think you know what you're doing, like you think you've done your due diligence, but like you just want somebody who's been there before to stand over your shoulder and be like, yes, this is a good deal. Go for it. Just to have that confidence to know like, okay, good. Somebody else is backing me up. I'm not just crazy. And it's almost like psychological. It's just having somebody else to make it okay for you to move forward and get you unstuck and not feel paralyzed. Because I tend to overanalyze stuff a lot. And I do feel paralyzed if somebody doesn't, if I don't know it or if somebody doesn't tell me it's okay. So, if I were to do this again now, I wouldn't need that blessing from many people anymore because I know a lot of what I'm doing. And yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a huge insight. I think that that whether someone is brand new to land and listening to this, or they're thinking about going into a new area of investment, like maybe self-storage or apartments or whatever it is, just being a newbie to something creates this oftentimes a big psychological block. And so, can you talk to us a little bit about, obviously you just mentioned about what types of things were coming up for you from a mindset standpoint in the self-storage space, but talk to us a little bit about what your mindset was like as a newbie to land when you first started.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of crippling self-doubt and, like I mentioned earlier, overthinking stuff. There's a lot of deals that I've passed on that I could have made great money from. And I mean, it's shameful, honestly, when I think back about it, how many things I could have done if I just would have been a little bit more bold or would have been willing to go out on a limb. Granted, there's also stuff I've saved myself from too, but more often than not, I think I've been a little too overcautious and just not willing to do certain things because it's foreign or risky, or I didn't have 100% clarity before I was able to move forward. So I guess just from a negative standpoint, that's something that I've identified in myself. And I guess I would just warn anybody out there, if I sound like you, I think I heard Ken McElroy one time say that he moves when he's 70% sure about things, because 100% certainty takes too long, and less than that just isn't good enough. Like, he needs to be about that sure before he'll do something. And I think that's a pretty good place to be in terms of certainty. And even when I look at what like a banker does when they approve a huge multi-million-dollar loan, that's kind of where they get too. Maybe a little bit further than that, but I mean, nobody's going to know all the answers, and there's always going to be, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? But yeah, I would just get reasonably confident and then move forward. And also, like, don't be afraid to partner with people who have been there. That not only can you get educated a lot based on that, but again, just psychologically, you can feel better about a decision because you can have somebody else there who has looked at the same information and they came to the same conclusion and they're on board with you. Even if it ends up falling apart, at least you can look back and say, look, I wasn't stupid. Like, somebody else was there with me. I didn't just blindly march into this thing. So those are some thoughts on that. But otherwise, my mindset, at least in the beginning, was almost sort of like a starvation mindset. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I was in a job that, like, I really did not want to do that long term. Like, it wasn't a bad job really, but when I thought about the prospect of, like, what if this is all I ever do? Like, what if I go to my grave and this was my greatest achievement, was working this job? Like, that would just be the tragedy of all tragedy. Like, I couldn't imagine doing that. Like, it just felt so unfulfilling in terms of what I knew I was capable of doing. And I just wanted to get out of that job. And when I saw land and knew how much better it was than anything else I had ever tried, real estate or non-real estate related, I was like, something is really special here. Like, I need to seize this opportunity. I need to do as many deals as I can. Like, I cannot waste a single moment of free time. And I didn't. Like, I worked all the time. Like, when I got home from work, I was on the phone with people. On the weekends, I was trying to do deals. And it was really hard. For years, I was doing that. And that's, a lot of people aren't willing to do it. And, I was talking to somebody not long ago who was basically, she's currently doing what I was doing back then. And she was saying, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I was like, I totally get that. Like, I just understand. It's just like burning the candle at both ends. And that's just the work part of it. You also think about, like, man, what if I send all this mail and nothing comes back from it? What if I buy this deal and it doesn't sell like I thought it would? Like, there's all these what ifs to think about too. There's a lot of stuff to cloud your brain as you're trying to work through this. When you look at anybody who has transitioned to full-time, or even anybody who's like made six figures, like, that's a very impressive feat. Like, there's a lot of things you have to overcome to get there. A lot of difficult things that most people, frankly, can't and won't do. So if anybody out there has made any, respectable amount of money, enough to pay off your student loans or buy a car, hats off to you. That's a big accomplishment. And yeah. So, but anyway, so I was coming from a place of starvation basically, and I wanted to get out of that job, and I was just kind of going after anything I could. And having a strong S score on the disc test. I was good at just plugging away and, not looking at the broader view of things. And that could be why I wasted a lot of time doing deals for a few years there that weren't making more money, because I was just more focused on just working. Like if I'm just working harder, somehow it's gonna work out, instead of planning more carefully and intentionally going after certain kinds of deals.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, so many great points that you just highlighted. Um, what was the moment for you that you felt, okay, I'm going to transition into this full time. I'm going to
Yeah.
leave the safety net of my W-2 and I'm going to do this full time.
Yeah, it was, let's see. I think it was when my wife and I got to this point in my job where I was just like so tired of it. Again, not that the job was bad. Like I can't blame anybody who I was working with. It wasn't their fault, but like I just hit the bottom of the barrel in my soul. Like I was just like, I'm not happy. Like this is very miserable for me to do this. And like I need to get out. I got to do something. And me and my wife sat down and we put together what we called the apocalypse budget to figure out like, okay, let's say I quit my job and everything goes horribly wrong. Nothing works out. Like, what is the minimum amount that we need to live, just to like pay the mortgage, get, rice and beans, and just, we'd sell a car, like just do whatever we have to just to stay alive. And it was really interesting exercise because we figured out like we didn't need that much money. And there was this totally artificial number in my mind for how much we were supposed to make. We both had to work full time and all this stuff. And we absolutely did not. And I mean, we could have easily survived just on my wife's income at the time. So it was just a big light bulb moment of like, I should have done this a long time ago. Like this is not nearly as hard as I think. And even when you think about like the cost of health insurance, I know that's a big, obstacle in a lot of people's minds. Like, how am I going to afford health insurance? Even with that, it was surprisingly achievable. And also realizing like, if I quit my job and try to do this and everything was horribly wrong, like I can always get another job. It's there's no reason I can't just go do something else or even change careers if I have to. Like I'm not going to die if this does not go well. I mean, it might be like emotionally traumatizing and sad and difficult and all this stuff, but Jim Carrey did this, what's it called? One of the speeches to a graduating class, convocation speech or commencement speech. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
He did a commencement speech years ago. It's on YouTube. And he talks about how his dad was like this amazingly funny person. Like he could have been a comedian. He probably could have been famous, but he went the safe route and became an accountant. And, all the bills are paid. There were no big surprises until one day he was laid off from his job. And he realized like you can fail at something you hate. So you might as well fail at something you love. It's like,
wow.
Yeah. So
that's powerful. That is really, really powerful. And I love that reframing that you mentioned where it's like, you just really sat down and looked at, okay, what is the worst case scenario? Because so often, I mean, I know I tend to do that so much of the time is to think that things are so much worse than they actually are. But until you shine a light on it and look at the boogeyman under the bed and realize, oh, wait a minute, it's really, I'm making it a much bigger deal than it actually is.
Yeah.
Right. That's
for sure.
Huge. That is huge from a mindset perspective. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'd like to know what your thoughts are about the market shifts that people are talking about, and how do you plan, or how are you adjusting your business for those market shifts?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people have that on their mind right now. So I think in terms of where it's going, like what it'll be like a year and 2 and 5 years from now, I don't know. I'm really curious to see that too. Like, is it going to get even more competitive? Like even harder? Like, is this trend going to continue, or is something going to break loose at some point? It'll get a lot easier for some reason. In terms of just where it's at right now, and the fact that the trend seems to be getting, harder to find deals and things are slowing down on the selling side, I think it's going to help to have some kind of competitive advantage, doing something that the other people out there are not doing. And that can be so many different things. I mean, it could be your overall business model, like if you're a Justin Sleva who is trying to buy and subdivide stuff. I mean, that's kind of a different business really than land flipping. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, but you make very different decisions on what kinds of properties you buy and how much you're willing to pay, and you can make a lot more money, but it's also kind of more work to get your hands dirty and make that stuff happen. So you could try to go that kind of route. You could try to do zoning and entitlements. I mean, you can just figure out like, what is my new niche? And I think that'll just help from the standpoint of like, it changes what kinds of sellers you're willing to go after and how much you're willing to pay. Like you don't just follow the same cookie cutter thing that everybody else is trying to do. It gives you a really easy way to stand out from the crowd and, kind of edge out whatever competition would have been there. Another way would be to just like, change up, like say if you are going to stay in just the straight up flipping game and do nothing different from that standpoint. I mean, you could change up the way that you're marketing people. You could change the stuff that you're saying to people. Callan Faulkner, when I saw what she was doing with her, the way she puts together offers, I mean, it's like a super professional looking, sharp, almost like a package that you're presenting to somebody. I mean, it looks way better than anything else anybody out there is sending. And does it make a difference? Oh, I mean, it might. It certainly could. I mean, depending on the recipient and what prior conversations you've had with them and how well you've gotten to know them. I mean, if you've got a tailored, personalized offer that shows very clearly, like you've done your homework, like you know exactly what their property is, you're not messing around. That looks very different than somebody who sends a one-page blind offer that they got from some course, and it's the same thing everybody else is sending out. So, I mean, just change up that kind of thing. There's also the people who want to go the texting route versus the cold calling, and, probably depends on the market and that kind of thing. There's different pros and cons to those alternative approaches, but there's that kind of way to do it. I've even heard, ideas of only going after $1 million and up properties, nothing else. And when you're making offers to them, you're making option offers to them, and you're paying a fairly high amount for that option. So like, again, it's a very different type of approach. Like you're going after a different kind of person on properties that probably don't get much mail because they're so expensive. And, it's again, it's sort of like a different business model. There's a different kind of clientele you'd be working with, different kinds of buyers you'd have to find on the back end, probably different decisions you would make on what is considered a good market. If we're going after a totally different type of vacant land now, you're not really playing the rules by the way that everybody else is doing it. And, depending on what you do, it could suddenly make it really easy to find deals because you're not doing the same stuff everybody else is doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of talk in a lot of industries I know about how to sort of evade the red ocean and find your own specific little blue ocean and work that niche. And so it definitely speaks to what you're speaking to, right now. So completely agree. What advice would you have for people who are saying, okay, I'm drowning in all this competition. I'm just trying to do this land flipping thing. I've tried all the different marketing, but I think I'm going to try a different niche. What would be some just fast and dirty rules or points that you would point out in terms of guiding them to how to find the niche?
Yeah. Well, that whole thing of I've tried all the different kinds of marketing. I kind of don't believe that. I can see why a person would think that, because then their minds, they sort of feel like they've exhausted the three options that are out there. But you got to remember, like, even with direct mail, like there are so many ways to screw that up. And there's so many different components into that recipe. And all it takes is a little bit too much of this or not enough of that. And like all of a sudden it doesn't work the way it was supposed to. So, and I know that's not really an easy answer. In fact, if anything, that makes it harder because now you're thinking, gosh, what are these things I'm screwing up? But it's just something to think about, that like to really call something dead, that's a huge statement. I mean, that means you're saying that you've tried literally everything and nothing works. And I don't believe that. So
yeah, that's a great point. I've seen people literally change the color of their mail piece and it changes, their results. So absolutely great point.
Yeah. So, and again, that's just talking about like in one direct mail medium or marketing medium, like direct mail. You could switch over to texting, and now it's a different set of rules and things you have to think about. But so there's that. Thinking of like, how can I really step back from this? And just evaluating like, what is everybody else doing? Like, what is this competition I'm up against? Like these other letters I'm getting in the mail from other competitors trying to buy my properties, like what do they all have in common? And how can I not have those same things in common? How can I be totally different from them in a way that's going to make me look way better? And maybe it's the offer price, and maybe you can do that depending on your strategy and what you're trying to do with it, what kinds of properties you're going after and your plans. But it could just be the fact that, hey, I actually pick up the phone when people call, or I can't tell you how many times I've gotten offers from people and I go to their website and it's broken, or I call them and nobody answers. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to consider there. You could also consider trying to partner with people. There's lots of different sources for deals out there. A lot of times just getting a funding partner alone can open up a ton of doors for you. I mean, they can make suggestions on other ways you could go about doing stuff. They don't want to do the work, but they can tell you how to do it, and they're happy to help you once you find the deal. There's lots of people that, heck, a mastermind group. Getting in a group with 3 or 4 other people, I guarantee you're going to learn something from that about like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Let me try that. Maybe that's going to work for me. And maybe consider changing up, like when you think about, just thinking of myself, like when I think about why did I even get into land in the first place? Like, what was it that drew me to this? For me, a big thing was it was super low risk and it was super cheap. I didn't need a whole lot of money to make this work. So what else would be super low risk and super cheap? Well, maybe going after $1 million deal with an option, because it's an option. I'm not buying the thing yet. And it doesn't have to cost that much. The option fee could be anything I want as long as I can afford it. Just finding other things that still check the same boxes, but it's very different than the thing you're currently doing that's not working. No.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Really great advice. What are the most important needle moving actions to take daily as a newbie in the land space?
Let's see. Most important actions. Yeah. I think this may vary depending on who you are and what your natural struggles are. Some of us, it's like procrastination, or for me, it's overthinking things, but I know a common one that I hear a lot of people say, you've probably heard it too, is just keeping the mail going, or whatever the thing is that you're sending out to find your deals. Maybe setting up some kind of a thing that just forces that action to happen because nothing else will happen until that happens. Some people don't really have that struggle though, or maybe you have a different kind of cyclical business where like, JT Olmsted, who's sending out tens of thousands of mailers once or twice a year, and that's it. So there's always exceptions to that rule, but so there's some thoughts there. Maybe depending on your business, I hear a lot of people asking about CRM stuff, but sometimes I wonder if that's overblown. I guess it probably depends on the deal volume and that kind of thing, but it's one of those things I feel like everybody wants, like, give me an easy button to somehow fix my business and organize everything. And there's definitely a point at which that's necessary, but a lot of CRMs take a lot of time to learn and cost a lot of money, and doesn't necessarily fix anything. It kind of just rearranges the problem a little bit. Maybe it connects a few dots for you, but yeah. So I guess I don't know what I'm saying with that. I just kind of went on a tangent there. But,
yeah, no, it's great. It's great. So speaking of tools, in what ways are you using AI in your business right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I actually went to a breakout session at Rubicon. It's a conference that was on about a month ago, about how AI can assist in real estate. And there was a lot of really interesting ideas. But like some of the ideas, for example, if let's say you've got a buyer and you're trying to sell a property with seller financing, and if you're a seller who does any kind of, credit checks or any kind of qualification at all, like more than just, do you have a pulse? And you're trying to figure out, is this going to be a good borrower? There's certain kinds of profiles you could put together to say, like, this is what the perfect borrower needs to look like, and then plug that information in. And maybe have ChatGPT give you a write-up on like, what is the risk level associated with this person? I don't know, that kind of thing. I know in the content creation space for RE Tipster, it's been super helpful just to like, not replacing the writing, but just like making it more understandable, more palatable. Say if you've got a huge long thing and you just want to summarize it in a sentence, like just boil it all down. Stop wasting my time. Just tell me what I need to know. Like it can do that for you really easily and really quickly. On land stuff, I know the other day, probably a month or so ago, I took a legal description and put it in ChatGPT and I said, show me where the coordinates are for this property in Google Earth, just to see if it could do it. And interestingly, on the first go around, it did give me coordinates for all the four corners, and I plugged it into Google Earth, and they were the correct distance apart from each other, but they were about a mile to the south. So it was totally wrong location, but that tells me like there's something there. Like it's probably going to get there pretty soon where it can do that. And when I told it, it was wrong, and I asked it to try again, it was like, as an AI model, I cannot answer this question. So I think it understands it can't do that anymore. But you know, stuff like that, like take a giant contract or something. Like I know I put together a option template not long ago, and I paid my attorney like $1,000 to make this option template for me. And I didn't really like the way that he worded it. Like it was just unnecessarily long and confusing. And by the time I got to the end of the thing, I'm like, what am I even reading? Like, what is this? And so I pasted it into ChatGPT and I said, please summarize this and explain it so a fifth grader could understand it, basically. And it did it. And I copied it and put it in my contract and sent it back to my attorney. And I was like, would this work? Like not telling him it came from ChatGPT. And he was like, yeah, that would totally work. So, I mean, I'm not recommending this, but just so you know, like it can do attorney work for you. It can send letters of demand to people. I mean, tell ChatGPT, you are an attorney. Do this for me. Use it at your own risk, but I'm just saying, your work for me, whatever that's worth.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that AI is opening up an entire world that's just going to be really fun to watch as it develops for our industry, for sure.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, what's something that no one is talking about in the land industry right now that they should be talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it's a big statement to say that nobody's talking about it, but there are things that very few people are talking about. I think it's kind of interesting because a lot of the people who talk are educators and they have a vested interest in selling you something, and they don't want you to think that this is hard. They want you to think this is easy. It's fine. There's opportunity everywhere. I'm not making a statement either way, but I think it's an important thing to understand is who is this speaker and what did they have in it when they're saying this? Like, is there something they have to possibly sell me? Is that why they're making this sound so easy? Because a lot of times the answer is yes. So there's that. And I think it's kind of this weird elephant in the room that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. And it's frustrating for people who are working really hard and they're struggling. Like you were saying earlier, like the competition here, they've done this stuff and it's not working for them. It's very frustrating to just hear this echo chamber of like, it still works. It's great. It's fun. Look at this huge deal I did. Look how successful I am. And they're wondering like, why isn't this working for me? Like, why am I so dumb? Why am I the problem? I'd say you're not the problem. I'd say probably a lot of people feel like that and they're afraid to speak up because they don't want to feel dumb or like they're somehow incompetent. But I think that's a very, very normal thing. And yes, there's always going to be these success stories out there because they're fun to talk about and we all have a lot of stuff to learn from them. I'm not saying that's bad to voice your success and that kind of thing. But it's also just important to recognize like there's this whole, I don't know if dark side is the word, but there's this underbelly that a lot of people don't give any airtime to. Nobody's going to post their failures. Not nobody, but most people will not do that. When they make a terrible mistake or it's just like, not going well, they're probably not going to brag about that to you. So, so there's that. Also this idea of, like I mentioned earlier, working yourself out of the land business. I mean, everybody has to self-select and decide what their future is, but, just logically looking at it, I think there's a lot of merit to that. I mean, it's kind of like a job when you think about it. And there's also, I mean, it's a good paying job, and there's certainly ways you can hire teams and all this stuff, but then you got to manage a team. And as long as your business is running, it's like there is risk in every deal you do. Maybe not a ton of risk. And maybe that risk level is increasing as we're paying more for properties and the margins are getting smaller. But, I just think it never hurts to have passive sources of income. And if you have none of those, which also probably means you have very little tax write-offs to work with, you might want to think about that. I know people who, have storage facilities or other types of triple net leases or hotels and stuff. They pay zero in taxes, nothing, year after year after year. And that's something you can get if you decide to figure out what is the next step. Like what might be beyond land investing? Maybe it's a business that's not even related to land. I don't know. But maybe land can be that seed capital you need to fund that startup, whatever that might happen to be, something that your actual passion is. And you can always use the skills that you learned in the land business in a lot of other ways. So.
Absolutely. So many things transfer. It's crazy how many things can actually transfer from land to other industries. Speaking of passion, what would you consider to be your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
Yeah, let's see. Well, honestly, I don't know if it's like the ultimate thing, but being able to run RE Tipster has been an amazingly rewarding thing for me. Not only because like I really love what I'm doing, like I'm genuinely thrilled to get into the office every day and start working. It is so much fun. But also, and this is something I don't get to see that much, but I was at a couple conferences this past month. I don't usually do a ton of conferences, but I got to meet a lot of people who came up to me and just be like, Seth, like you've changed my life. Like I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for my college education, and your free stuff on your blog was more valuable than anything I ever learned in college. Stuff like that is just like, whoa. And also just like I get emails to this effect pretty regularly, which is amazing. But like to see the person face to face and like see their emotion and hear their voice and just realize this is a real person. Like I actually made a difference. That's so cool. That's a great thing. But beyond RE Tipster, yeah, I mean, I want to see my kids grow up and be great people and have, rewarding lives and, make the world a better place and, follow whatever God puts on their heart to do. So that's really important to me. And the world is getting weirder and weirder by the day. Lots of strange things to try to figure out in all kinds of different ways. And I want to be able to just be involved and kind of guide them through that as best as I can, based on the struggles I've had in my own life. So there's that. And, in terms of just other like passion projects, what do you call it? I'm a sponsor of several different kids in different countries through Compassion and World Vision. I've been doing that for a long time. And that's also a lot of fun too. I feel like it's less fun because I don't really get to see them in person. That would probably make it a lot cooler, but still just seeing like people who are so poor, like they're going to die tomorrow if they don't get food. Like it's that bad for them. And you get to not only fix that problem, but like give them an education and see their life, like really have hope when they wouldn't have it otherwise. And to be able to do that for a fairly small amount of money is a really cool thing. It's actually crazy how easy it is to make that big of a difference. So that's something I want to keep doing a lot as well. So.
Yeah, that's incredible impact. I mean, impact, legacy, and in so many different ways. So that's really, really special. So really cool stuff. What's your definition of success?
One word, money. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Trying to think of something deep to say here. I mean, as a Christian, I really want to live my life in a way that's going to be eternally impactful and make a difference to people in one way or another. So I think that's a big part of it for me. And just like for my own life, I think being able to enjoy what you do day to day is a huge deal because I lived several years not in that place where, I mean, I'm sure we've all been there. It's not fun when you don't know, like, is my future headed anywhere exciting or is this really it? And for a lot of time, for years, I didn't know if I'd ever find anything. And crazy thing is, like, a lot of people I worked with still haven't found anything, and they probably never will. I think honestly, most people don't find this amazing thing that, gives them so much, it's so rewarding in their life. So the fact that I'm able to do that like a few times is a really cool thing. And even if it all stopped tomorrow and I had to go back to my job, I'd still be really thankful for these years I had where, like, I was there with my kids. Like, I loved what I was doing. I saw the impact. Like, that's not wasted on me, how special that is. So I think being able to have a life like that is just an amazing thing. So yeah, that's success to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Seth, what would you consider to be your superpower?
Yeah, probably it's there's a book, I think it's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. But for me, I think my superpower is being able to really plug away at stuff, like just get work done. Like I actually get really annoyed sometimes by dreamers and vision casters because they, said these grand ideas, and I know, like, you're not going to do it. I'm the one that has to do it. And it just kind of annoys me because it's a ton of work to actually get the job done. And if you don't do that work, then your idea is worth nothing. So I think that's one thing, is my ability to work hard. But on the flip side, like, it's kind of a disability too, because at some point, like, you do need that vision person to keep it going. So I think the strong S thing is a big deal, but also on the Enneagram, I'm a type 6, which is the loyalist, I think it's called. And loyalty, I can't deny, like, I have that. Like, when I decide to do something, like, it is going to happen. Like, it's extremely rare that I make a big decision to start down a path and it doesn't end up happening. So there's that too. And also, like, taking complex ideas or trying to take difficult things and break them down into digestible, bite-sized chunks that people can actually understand and do something with. And when somebody just kind of rattles off a surface level answer that doesn't really answer the question, like, digging deeper, like, I really want to know, like, I'm not just asking this to waste your time. Like, let's really get to the bottom of this so people can have their life changed by this. And yeah, there you go. There's some superpowers for you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. What's the biggest surprise you've had so far on your journey into the land space?
Yeah, interesting. I don't know if it's so much a surprise, but it's just been kind of interesting to see just this small industry and how it's evolved over the years. Because I know when I got started and I first learned about this, it was like, I mean, I immediately had this fear of, like, oh man, like, I need to keep this a secret. Nobody else can know about this, or this is going to be completely ruined next week. And that was absolutely not true. But, like, there is some merit to that because, there is more competition than there used to be, and it is making it harder. So, but it's just been interesting to kind of stand back and, with the years that I've been in it, have the perspective of seeing what it used to be in certain market conditions and how the market has changed things and new people entering the space, and just almost the need to reinvent oneself is something that I think everybody has to do at some point, to just, like, get on the road and coast and not think and just keep pedaling. It just doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. Like, you'll totally backslide in one way or another if you're not willing to think outside the box and do things differently. So, but just interesting to sit back and watch things and see where they're headed. So, in terms of, like, actual surprises, I mean, I don't know why my brain is going dead. I'm sure there's been something, but I can't think of any, like, shocking revelations or anything that have come up.
Right. No, that's very good. That's very good. As a content creator, who are some of your favorite entrepreneurs, business owners that you follow?
Yeah, good question. So you said entrepreneurs and business leaders? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them, really. There's lots of people that, and I follow them in different ways. Like some of them, I'll listen to their podcast. Others, I see them on YouTube. And some people, it's like, I just read anything in the news about you. But I think Jordan Peterson is a pretty amazing guy. He's a really good thinker. He can just like make sense out of everything, out of anything that comes up. And sometimes it's a little left brain and kind of academic. And, I have a hard time understanding what he's getting at. But most of the time, he just distills things down in a way that makes sense when it otherwise didn't make sense. I guess he's an entrepreneur, sort of. But yeah, I'm trying to think of who else. There's a bunch of different business podcasts I listen to, like Donald Miller, different businessy kind of people. Elon Musk, I think, is just a fascinating guy just because of how huge he is. There's probably more too, but that's kind of the immediate ones that come to mind.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. So if you could go back and tell yourself 3 pieces of advice when you were a newbie, what would they be?
Yeah, I would say maybe think bigger is one of them. And don't be so afraid. Like think about like, what do you really stand to lose if you buy this $500 property and it doesn't sell? Like what's really the worst that's going to happen? So that kind of thing. And then, so this last thing, it's interesting because the advice is basically like hire more people and delegate and that kind of thing. But even though I would say that, I still don't really do that well. So it's like an admitted fault that I don't have figured out yet. Like I definitely hire people, but I'm not that great at managing people and holding their hand and coming alongside them and training them and trying to figure them out and all this stuff. That's a frustration for me that I don't have. I'm not an expert at that yet, but still, I think that's something I should have started doing a lot earlier.
That's a hard one. That's really, really difficult because you're dealing with so many, different variables and components when you're dealing with people. So Definitely understand that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for giving to us today, Seth. This has been really awesome. How can we give back to you right now? Like what resources or connections are you looking for currently?
Yeah, good question. Well, I'm kind of trying to find ways to do land deals that don't require as much of my time, whether that involves like buying an existing note or funding somebody's deal, that kind of thing. And I've never really openly advertised this, I guess, but I guess here we go. We'll give it a whirl right now. See how it goes.
Let's do it.
So yeah, I mean, if you've got a deal that needs funding or something, feel free to reach out to me. It's I guess that's the most relevant thing I could think of for this audience.
Yeah. And how can people reach out to you?
Seth at retipster.com.
Awesome. Well, Seth, I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I was so looking forward to this, and this was definitely a highlight. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everyone who joined us on the call today. We will be back next week. So please stay tuned to who we have coming up. Seth, thank you so much. You've been absolutely incredible. It was a pleasure visiting with you today. Everyone, be great. Have a great week, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other 7-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at OnlyLandFans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.